The great hall of the Imperial Senate stretched up into darkness, its crystal walls glowing with soft blue light. 10,000 seats, each representing a world of the Galactic Empire, curved up in perfect rings. At the center stood a single human, small against the vast chamber scale. Ambassador James adjusted his simple black uniform and looked up at the Grand Council. 5 ancient rulers of the Empire sat on their elevated platform, their silver robes catching the light. They looked down at him with what he could only describe as bored amusement. "Honorable Council," James said, his voice clear and steady in the quiet chamber. "Earth comes before you today with a warning. Our deep space sensors have detected something awakening in the void between galaxies, something that matches the descriptions in the ancient ruins we found on Mars." A murmur of laughter rippled through the gathered senators. Admiral Stone, commander of the Empire's Third Fleet, stepped forward from his position near the council. His purple cape swished as he moved. "Ambassador," Stone said, not hiding his smile, "you represent a species that has barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Your people have colonized what? 3 systems? 4? And you dare to come here and warn the Empire that has ruled the stars for 10,000 years." James remained calm. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and a hologram appeared above the chamber center. It showed a mass of shifting, twisting shapes, like a storm made of living metal. "This footage comes from our long-range probes," James explained. "The entity is moving, growing. Our scientists estimate it will reach the galaxy's edge within 3 months." High Counselor Rex leaned forward, his ancient face lined with disapproval. "The Empire has faced countless threats in its history, Ambassador. Rebels, pirates, alien invasions, all have broken against our might. What makes your warning so special?" James looked directly at the council. "Because we've seen this before. The ruins on Mars weren't just warnings. They were instructions, left by the last civilization that fought this enemy. They called it the Void Swarm. It adapts, it learns, and it's hungry." Another wave of laughter, louder this time. Admiral Stone shook his head. "Our fleets guard 10,000 worlds, Ambassador. Our ships number in the millions. Our weapons can crack planets. Whatever this threat is, the Empire will crush it." James walked to the center of the speaking platform. The hologram shifted, showing detailed scans. "The Void Swarm doesn't fight like normal enemies. It takes your weapons, your technology, and turns them against you. The Mars ruins showed us how one of the most advanced civilizations in history fell to it. They weren't ready, but we can be." "Enough." High Counselor Rex stood, his voice echoing. "The Empire does not need survival lessons from children who have barely left their cradle world. This session is concluded." James waited as the senators began to file out, many still chuckling at Earth's presumption. Admiral Stone approached him, looking down with a mixture of pity and contempt. "You humans," Stone said quietly, "always thinking you know better, always convinced you're special. The Empire has kept peace in this galaxy since before your people invented the wheel. Remember your place." James gathered his materials slowly, watching the chamber empty. Before leaving, he turned to Stone one last time. "Admiral, remember this day. Remember how you laughed. Because in 3 months, you'll be wondering how things could have been different if you'd listened." The human ambassador walked out of the great hall, his footsteps echoing in the growing silence. Behind him, the mighty Empire continued its business, secure in its power, certain of its immortality. The warning had been given. The choice had been made. In the depths of space, something stirred, something hungry, something that had eaten empires before. And it was coming. 3 months passed like a dying breath. Captain Marcus stood on the bridge of the Imperial warship, Star's Glory, watching as another world burned. The colony of New Haven, once home to millions, now crawled with shifting masses of living metal. "Sir," his second officer called out, voice shaking, "the Void Swarm, it's not just destroying the buildings. It's eating them. converting them into more of itself. Marcus gripped the command rail until his knuckles turned white. This was the third world he'd seen fall in 7 days. The mighty Imperial fleet, pride of the galaxy, had proven as effective as throwing rocks at a storm. "Send the report to command," he ordered. "Tell them." He paused, watching as one of his destroyers tried to ram the swarm. The ship disappeared into the mass of writhing metal, and moments later emerged change. Its once golden hull now rippled with dark energy, its weapons turned against its former allies. "Tell them we lost another one." The battle for New Haven lasted 6 hours. By the end, Marcus had lost half his fleet. The survivors jumped to safety, carrying refugees and terrible news. The Void Swarm didn't just defeat its enemies. It absorbed them, learned from them, grew stronger with each victory. In the Imperial capital, the Grand Council was no longer laughing. "How?" Admiral Stone demanded, pacing before the emergency session. "How did we not see this coming?" His eyes darted to the empty seats in the chamber, representatives of worlds already lost to the swarm. A junior officer rushed in, face pale. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Centauri Defense Fleet. All 40,000 ships, gone." The chamber erupted in panic. High Counselor Rex raised his hands for silence. "Our finest weapons have failed. Our strongest shields mean nothing. This enemy—" He stopped, looking older than ever. "This enemy is unlike anything we faced." "Sir," another messenger burst through the doors. "Word from the Outer Rim. The human colonies, they're holding." The chamber went quiet. Admiral Stone turned slowly. "What did you say?" "The human worlds, sir. They're fighting back. Successfully. We have confirmed reports of Void Swarm forces being repelled from Earth's territory." Marcus, who had been summoned to report on New Haven's fall, felt his heart skip. The humans, the same humans they had laughed at 3 months ago, were doing what the Empire couldn't. "Show us," High Counselor Rex commanded. The chamber's holographic display came to life. It showed Earth ships, smaller than Imperial vessels, but moving with incredible speed and precision. They didn't try to match the swarm's power. Instead, they adapted, changed tactics, used unpredictable patterns. "Look at their weapon signatures," Marcus said, stepping forward. "They're changing frequency and power levels constantly. The swarm, it can't adapt fast enough." They watched as human vessels performed what seemed like a chaotic dance, never presenting the same pattern or defense twice. When the swarm absorbed and copied one tactic, the humans had already switched to another. Admiral Stone's face was a mask of disbelief. 3 months ago, we called them children. Now they might be our only hope. The council chamber fell silent as they watched another recording. A swarm tendril, large enough to swallow a moon, approached Earth. Everyone expected to see humanity's homeworld fall like so many others. Instead, the planet's defense grid lit up with 1,000 different weapons, each using different frequencies, different attack patterns. The swarm tried to adapt, tried to absorb and learn, but there were too many variables, too much chaos in the human defense. The tendril retreated, the first time anyone had seen the swarm turn back. "Get me Earth's military command," High Counselor Rex ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of the Empire's pride. It seems we have something to learn from our young friends." In the darkness between stars, the Void Swarm continued to grow. But for the first time since it entered the galaxy, it had met something it couldn't simply absorb and overcome. It had met humanity. The Earth Military Command Center was nothing like Marcus had expected. No golden towers, no grand halls, just a simple building buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. The walls were plain metal, the lights practical rather than decorative. Everything served a purpose. Commander Anna met him in a briefing room filled with holographic displays showing battle data from across the galaxy. She wore a simple black uniform with no medals or fancy decorations. Her gray eyes studied him with sharp intelligence. "Your Empire's ships are powerful," she said, pulling up a simulation of an Imperial dreadnought. But power isn't enough against the swarm. You need to be unpredictable. Marcus watched as she demonstrated what happened when Imperial ships engaged the enemy. We attack with everything we have, overwhelm them with firepower, he said, defending his training. Anna nodded. And that worked for every enemy you faced before. But the swarm, she pressed a button, showing how the metal monsters absorbed and adapted to each attack. It learns. Every time you hit it with the same weapon, it gets stronger against that weapon. Then how do you fight something like that? Marcus asked, thinking of all the worlds he'd seen fall. Anna smiled and brought up footage from Earth's defensive battles. We don't try to overpower it. We confuse it. Look here. The display showed human ships moving in seemingly random patterns, their weapons constantly changing frequency and power levels. Our ships carry 100 different weapon types, she explained. Each one can change its output in thousands of ways. We never hit the swarm the same way twice. By the time it adapts to one attack, we've already switched to something completely different. Marcus leaned forward, studying the tactics. But how do your ships coordinate such chaos? Battle networks, Anna said, bringing up another display. Every human ship has a quantum computer that can calculate millions of possible attack patterns per second. The ships work together, but each one acts independently, creating patterns too complex for the swarm to predict or copy. She walked to another screen showing the ruins on Mars. When we found these, we knew we weren't ready for a direct fight. So we spent 30 years preparing, building weapons that could change and adapt, training our people to think differently. The Mars ruins didn't just warn us about the swarm, they taught us how to survive it. Marcus thought about the Empire's rigid battle formations, their standardized weapons and tactics. Everything that had made them unbeatable for 10,000 years now made them vulnerable. Your fleet captains will need to unlearn a lot, Anna said, reading his expression. The swarm punishes predictability, but we can teach them if they're willing to learn. An alert flashed on the main screen. Another Imperial world was under attack. But this time, something was different. The swarm had changed its tactics, becoming even more aggressive. It's evolving faster now, Anna said, her face grim. Every battle teaches it something new. We need to combine our strengths, human adaptability with Imperial resources. Otherwise, there won't be a galaxy left to save. Marcus straightened his uniform. The Empire's pride has cost us dozens of worlds already. We can't afford to be proud anymore. He held out his hand. Teach us. Anna took his hand, sealing the alliance. We'll start with your ship. The Star's Glory will be the first Imperial vessel to receive our upgrade package. Your crew will need to forget everything they know about space combat. They're ready, Marcus said, watching the swarm tear apart another world on the display. We all are. Above them, in orbit, human engineers were already swarming over his ship, installing new systems, adding weapons that could change their nature mid-battle. The mighty Imperial warship was about to become something new, a hybrid of human innovation and Imperial power. The real war was about to begin. The Star's Glory didn't look like an Imperial warship anymore. Its golden hull now rippled with adaptive plating that could change its properties in seconds. Weapon ports dotted its surface randomly, each capable of shifting position to prevent the swarm from predicting attack patterns. Marcus watched his crew train with the new systems. After 2 weeks of learning human combat techniques, even the most stubborn Imperial officers had to admit, this was a better way to fight. Your gunners are learning fast, Commander Anna said, standing beside him on the bridge. She pointed to a simulation running on the main screen, where Imperial crew members practiced rapid-fire weapon changes against simulated swarm attacks. They're motivated, Marcus replied. Everyone here has lost someone to the swarm. The ship's new AI battle system flashed a warning. Void swarm signatures detected, it announced. Colony World Delta Prime under attack. Imperial forces requesting immediate assistance. Anna's eyes met Marcus's, ready to test these upgrades in real combat. "Star's Glory, battle stations," Marcus ordered. The crew moved with practiced speed, but not in the rigid Imperial way. They flowed like water, adapting to each situation as they'd been taught. The ship dropped out of hyperspace above Delta Prime. 3 massive swarm tendrils were attacking the planet, while damaged Imperial ships tried desperately to defend it. "This is Captain Marcus of the Star's Glory," he broadcast to the Imperial fleet. "Fall back and regroup. We'll demonstrate the new tactics." The Star's Glory charged forward, its hull shifting colors and patterns. Energy weapons fired from constantly moving ports, each blast using a different frequency. When the swarm tried to adapt to one attack, the ship was already using 5 new ones. "They're trying to predict our pattern," Anna said, watching the tactical display. "But there isn't one to find." Marcus nodded. "Launch the fighter wings." Squadrons of newly modified Imperial fighters swarmed from the ship's hangar. Instead of flying in traditional formations, they moved chaotically, each fighter's AI working with the others to create beautiful destruction. The swarm tried to absorb and adapt, but the attacks came too fast, too randomly. A tendril reached for the Star's Glory, hoping to consume its technology. The ship's hull responded by changing its atomic structure entirely, becoming something the swarm couldn't process. "Look at that," one of the bridge officers called out. "They're actually retreating." The swarm pulled back from Delta Prime, its tendrils twisted in what almost looked like confusion. For the first time, it had met Imperial forces it couldn't simply absorb and overcome. "Send the battle data to Imperial Command," Marcus ordered. "They need to see this." Hours later, in the Imperial capital, the Grand Council watched recordings of the battle. Admiral Stone stood at attention, his expression a mixture of humility and hope. "One ship," he said quietly. "One ship with human upgrades did what an entire fleet couldn't." High Counselor Rex nodded slowly. "How quickly can we implement these changes across the fleet?" "The humans have provided everything we need," Stone replied. "Training crews will take time, but they're sending instructors. They're calling it Project Adaptation." On the Star's Glory, Marcus and Anna reviewed the battle data. The ship's AI was already suggesting improvements, learning from every engagement just as the swarm did. "Your crew performed perfectly," Anna said. "They've embraced our way of thinking." Marcus smiled. "The Empire has survived for 10,000 years because it was the strongest. Now we're learning that survival isn't about being the strongest, it's about being able to change." Below them, Delta Prime citizens celebrated their salvation. Above them, Imperial ships were already arriving for their own upgrades. The Empire was transforming, one ship at a time. And somewhere in the void, the swarm was learning that its prey had finally learned to bite back. The Imperial War Academy looked nothing like it had 3 months ago, where once rigid ranks of officers practiced traditional formations, now organized chaos ruled. Human instructors worked alongside Imperial veterans, teaching the art of unpredictable warfare. Admiral Stone walked through the training grounds with Commander Anna, watching as cadets practiced with simulation pods. Each pod could recreate any battle scenario, forcing students to think on their feet. "Your success at Delta Prime changed everything," Anna said, pausing to observe a young officer's performance. "Every Imperial captain now wants human upgrades for their ship." Stone nodded, remembering his own mockery of humans just months ago. "Pride makes for poor armor against the Void Swarm. We're learning that lesson well." A loud cheer erupted from one of the simulation areas. A cadet had just beaten a swarm attack using a completely new tactic, one that even the human instructors hadn't seen before. "That's exactly what we want to see," Anna smiled. "They're not just copying our methods anymore. They're creating their own." In orbit above the Imperial capital, Marcus supervised the modification of the Third Fleet. Shipyards that had built the same vessel designs for centuries now hummed with new energy. Each ship emerged different from the last, a deliberate strategy to prevent the swarm from learning any patterns. "Captain, His communications officer called out, "We're receiving reports from the research division. They've made a breakthrough." Marcus hurried to the laboratory section of the station. Inside, human and Imperial scientists worked side by side, surrounded by holographic displays and strange equipment. The head researcher, Dr. Wells, looked up with excitement. "We've done it," Wells said, pointing to a container of shifting metal. "We captured a small piece of the swarm during the Delta Prime battle. We've been studying how it adapts, and now we can replicate the process." Marcus watched as the captured material changed its structure, responding to different energy signatures. "You mean we can use their own ability against them?" "Better," Wells replied. "We understand it now. Every time the swarm adapts, it has to follow certain rules. With this knowledge, we can predict how it will change and counter it before it happens." The news spread quickly through the Empire. Worlds that had lost hope found it again. The swarm was no longer an unstoppable force. It was an enemy that could be understood and defeated. In the Imperial Senate, High Counselor Rex made a historic announcement. "From this day forward, the Empire acknowledges Earth as a full partner in our civilization. Their wisdom and innovation have proven as valuable as our strength and resources." The chamber, once filled with laughter at humanity's warnings, now erupted in applause. Ambassador James stood at the speaker's platform, the same place where he had delivered his ignored warning months ago. "The swarm thinks it grows stronger with every battle," James said. "But so do we. Together, we adapt faster than it ever could." Back on the training grounds, Admiral Stone watched as a new class of officers graduated. They moved with a fluid grace that would have been considered undisciplined in the old Empire. Their weapons could change form and function mid-battle. Their ships could alter their very nature to confuse the enemy. "We've changed more in 3 months than we did in 1,000 years, Stone said to Anna. She nodded. "Change or die. That's the law of the universe. The swarm taught us that. Now it's going to learn what happens when humanity and the Empire evolve together." In deep space, Imperial scout ships tracked the swarm's movements. It was gathering its forces, preparing for something big. But this time, the galaxy was ready. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The combined fleet stretched across space like a sea of stars. 10,000 ships, each one different from the next, gathered for humanity's boldest operation yet, Operation Daybreak. At its heart, the star's glory led the formation, its adaptive hull rippling with anticipation. Marcus stood on his bridge, Commander Anna at his side. The tactical display showed the massive swarm concentration at the galaxy's core. Months of tracking had finally revealed the truth. The swarm had a central intelligence, a hive mind that guided all its parts. "All ships report ready," his communications officer announced. "The human AI networks are synchronized. Imperial heavy weapons are charged." Anna studied the battle plan one last time. "The swarm thinks it's gathering for a final push against our worlds. It doesn't realize we've learned to track its communication signals." "Fleet-wide broadcast," Marcus ordered. Admiral Stone's image appeared on every ship's command screen. "Soldiers of Earth and the Empire," Stone began, his voice strong and clear. "Today we strike at the heart of our enemy. Every world it has taken, every life it has stolen. Today we answer for them all." The fleet moved as one, jumping into hyperspace. When they emerged, the galaxy's core burned before them. The swarm had built something massive there, a structure larger than any planet, pulsing with dark energy. "By the stars," Marcus whispered. "That's their nest." The swarm reacted instantly. Millions of tendrils reached out like a metallic storm, rushing to protect their central brain. But this time, they faced an enemy that had learned all their tricks. "Execute pattern chaos," Anna commanded. The fleet broke apart, each ship following its own random course. Weapons fired in constantly changing patterns, frequencies shifting faster than the swarm could adapt. Imperial dreadnoughts launched waves of fighters, each one controlled by quantum AI that could calculate 1 million possibilities per second. Human ships darted between the larger vessels, their experimental weapons tearing holes in the swarm's defenses. "They're trying to adapt," an officer shouted as the swarm changed tactics. "But each ship is different. They can't find a pattern to copy." Marcus watched as the Star's Glory led a strike team toward the central structure. The ship's hull shifted through different atomic configurations, becoming something new each time the swarm tried to analyze it. "We're getting through," Anna reported. "Their outer defenses are falling." But the swarm had one last trick. The central structure began to pulse, sending out waves of energy that started to override their ship's systems. "It's trying to hack our network," Marcus's engineering chief called out. "The AI defenses air. Switch to human control," Anna ordered. "Everyone, manual override." The swarm can't predict human chaos. Across the fleet, trained crews took direct control of their ships. The formation became even more random, guided by human instinct and intuition rather than computer precision. The swarm, built to analyze and counter patterns, couldn't handle the pure unpredictability of human thought. "Main gun charge," Marcus's weapons officer reported. "The core is exposed. All ships, converge fire." Admiral Stone commanded. "Hit it with everything. All different frequencies." 10,000 ships fired as one, each shot unique, each beam carrying a different energy signature. The swarm's central brain tried to adapt, tried to defend itself, but there were too many variations to counter. The structure began to break apart, its dark energy turning in on itself. Throughout the galaxy, every piece of the swarm suddenly lost direction, becoming dormant without their hive mind to guide them. "We did it," Anna said quietly, watching the explosion light up the galactic core. "We actually did it." Marcus nodded, but he knew the victory had come at a cost. Many ships were lost, many brave crews sacrificed, but they had proved something incredible. When humanity and the Empire worked together, nothing was unstoppable. The war wasn't over. There would be cleanup, rebuilding, hunting down remnants of the swarm. But the main threat was gone, destroyed by the very adaptability it had used against others. The galaxy was about to enter a new age. 1 year after Operation Daybreak, the Imperial capital shone with new light. Crystal spires still reached toward the stars, but now they pulsed with adaptive technology, ready to change their structure at a moment's notice. The Empire had learned its lesson well. Survival meant never staying the same for too long. Admiral Stone stood at the window of his office, watching Earth ships patrol alongside Imperial vessels. Each one was different, a deliberate choice that had become the new standard. In the distance, construction crews rebuilt the Senate chamber using principles learned from the war. The final report from the cleanup operations. "Admiral," a young officer said, placing a datapad on his desk. Stone picked it up, scrolling through the numbers. The last remnants of the swarm had been found and destroyed. Worlds were being reclaimed, colonies rebuilt. But the real changes were deeper than just victory over an enemy. In the Imperial War Academy below, he could see human and Imperial instructors teaching together. The rigid military that had existed for 10,000 years had transformed into something new. Every cadet now learned to think independently, to adapt, to question traditional tactics. "Admiral," his assistant called, "the ceremony is about to begin." In the great plaza before the Senate, crowds gathered to witness history. High Counselor Rex stood with Ambassador James as they unveiled the new symbol of their civilization, a double helix of stars, representing the intertwined strength of humanity and the Empire. "Today we formalize what we have already learned," Rex announced, his voice carrying across the plaza. "The Galactic Empire becomes the Federation of Adapted Worlds. No longer will we rule through unchanging strength, but through endless evolution." Marcus and Anna watched from their place among the honored heroes. The Star's Glory, now a legend, rested in orbit above them, its adaptive hull gleaming in the sunlight. Did you ever think it would end like this? Marcus asked, looking at the crowds of humans and Imperials mingling together. Anna smiled. End? This is just the beginning. The swarm taught us something valuable. The galaxy belongs to those who can change. In the new Senate chamber, representatives from Earth sat alongside Imperial senators. The traditional hierarchy had given way to a system that valued innovation and adaptability over age and tradition. Worlds that had been considered too young or primitive were now welcomed for their fresh perspectives. Dr. Wells presented the latest research to the Science Council, showing how they had mastered the swarm's adaptive technology. We've learned to control it, to use it safely, he explained. Every world in the Federation will benefit from this knowledge. But perhaps the greatest change was visible in the people themselves. Imperial citizens who had once looked down on younger species now sought out new ideas, new ways of thinking. Human adaptability had become the most valued trait in the galaxy. Admiral Stone made his way to the Federation's new military command center. The walls displayed real-time feeds from patrol ships across the galaxy, each one unique, each one ready to change at a moment's notice. We're tracking an anomaly in the outer rim, a sensor operator reported. Something we've never seen before. Stone smiled. A year ago, such news would have brought fear. Now it brought excitement. Alert our research teams, he ordered. Let's see what we can learn from it. As night fell on the capital, the city's lights created patterns that never repeated. In orbit, ships of all designs maintained their watch. The Federation had learned that true strength wasn't in numbers or firepower, but in the ability to face the unknown without fear. The Empire had laughed at humanity's warning. Now, transformed by human innovation, it had become something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. In the end, the swarm's greatest gift had been forcing them to change. And in the vast darkness between the stars, the Federation's ships continued their patrol, ready for whatever the galaxy might bring next. Because now they understood. There was no final form, no perfect way of being. There was only adaptation, only change, only the endless dance of becoming something new. The true age of humanity had begun.